Hi, welcome to International Women's Day. We're at the marketplace right now from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So click the link above to join us, and we'll see you back here at the main stage at 11:30. Hi, welcome to International Women's Day. We're at the marketplace right now from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So click the link above to join us, and we'll see you back here at the main stage at 11:30. Welcome to International Women's Day. We're at the marketplace right now from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So click the link above to join us, and we'll see you back here at the main stage at 11:30. Welcome to International Women's Day. We're at the marketplace right now from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So click the link above to join us, and we'll see you back here at the main stage at 11:30. Hi, welcome to International Women's Day. We're at the marketplace right now from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So click the link above to join us, and we'll see you back here at the main stage at 11:30. Welcome to International Women's Day. We're at the marketplace right now from 11 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So click the link above to join us, and we'll see you back here at the main stage at 11:30.
On behalf of the board of the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce and my colleagues, welcome to International Women's Day 2022. My name is Mishka Balsam and I'm the CEO of the GNCC. My heartfelt thanks to each and every one for being with us to celebrate this day, and a very special welcome to our two guests, our award recipient, Jen Harper, and our keynote speaker, strong advocate for gender equity, Steph Guthrie. Let us start out by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. And we also recognize the contributions of Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous people, both in shaping and strengthening this region in particular, and our province and country as a whole. I would also like to take a moment to express our solidarity with the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian business community during these tragic times for their country. Women in the Ukraine are no strangers to war. Every woman has a personal connection as a survivor, a widow, a mother of a soldier, and a daughter of a victim. We know that women will be impacted differently and disproportionately during a war. And in the weeks to come, we need to make sure that women are kept at the center of our focus and ensure that the humanitarian assistance planned and provided is gender responsive. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is Break the Bias, which highlights the importance of challenging biases and misconceptions and the interest of creating a more inclusive and gender equal world. Break the bias means a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination. Just imagine that. We have the opportunity to challenge stereotypes, fight biases, practice acceptance, broaden our minds, call out inequality, and celebrate women's achievements. Taking action on Break the Bias begins when we individually take responsibility for our thoughts and actions, and ask the same of our communities, workplaces, schools, and governments. We can break the bias and we can make a difference. Sometimes it helps us to have practical tools available to us that can make it a little bit easier. Here at the GNCC, with the assistance of our counterparts at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we will launch a practical new toolkit that assists businesses and assists you to recruit, retain, and promote more women at work, as well as bring them onto boards. Please look for a link which we will share next week via email with all of our participants, as well as in our daily update. To be inspired by today's theme, to be motivated, and to advance this year's theme requires partners at our side. None of all that we would be doing and what we are doing would be possible without the valued partnerships. It is my privilege to recognize the co-titled sponsors Penn Financial Credit Union and Niagara Region Economic Development at this time, along with our partners, United Way Niagara, Bell, Innovate Niagara, Soundbox Niagara, Ontario Power Generation, and Brock University Faculty of Social Sciences. The leadership behind this gathering comes from our WIN, our Women in Niagara Council, focus on fostering the growth and success of women in business. WIN is committed to providing women with opportunities to succeed and thrive. And this is likely more important than ever. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Grace Al-Najani, our chair of WIN Council and a certified meeting professional and digital event strategist who has worked in the travel and tourism industry for 15 years. Grace, over to you.
Thank you, Mishka. Welcome to our 21st Annual International Women's Day event presented by Women in Niagara, the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce, and generously sponsored by Niagara Region Economic Development and Penn Financial Credit Union. We are very proud to be bringing so many of you together again today in our virtual setting. We are over 500 strong on this platform, and we promise you it will be worth your precious screen time today. If you have any troubles navigating, just click on the button that says Help. I'll go over some housekeeping items now. Please use the live chat function, which can be found below the screen, to chat with each other. Please also use this chat to submit questions to our speakers. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Make sure you visit the photo booth. For each photo submitted, you will be given a virtual scratch ticket for a chance to win some great prizes. Please make sure to allow use of your camera in your browser. And we've already seen some great pictures coming out of this, so keep it up, everybody. It's great to see. We are so pleased that you have chosen to celebrate International Women's Day with us, to celebrate each other, inspire each other to break the bias, which of course is the theme for International Women's Day 2022. To share on social media, please use the hashtag #BreakTheBias along with hashtag IWD2022. Our Twitter handle is GNCC_win. And on Instagram, we are Women in Niagara. Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge women's equality. Collectively, we can all celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against bias, and take action for equality, which is what brings us all here today. As Mishka mentioned, the mission of the Women in Niagara Council is to foster the growth and success of women in business in Niagara, because we know that when women succeed and gender non-binary folks succeed, we will all benefit. We do this by identifying issues, being a resource, and advocating. We want to expand our collaboration and inspire leadership. These past 2 years have shown us why this work is important, that International Women's Day is needed now more than ever, as the pandemic has highlighted the vulnerabilities, challenges, and inequalities that women still face in the economy, in society, and in politics today. As we said last year, the pandemic has also highlighted the gendered nature of work, that women are predominantly on the front line in healthcare, social services, and economic sectors that have been most impacted by the shutdowns, and the critical importance of childcare for economic recovery, for women to get back to work and to invest in social infrastructure. This year it came to light, as we all sat behind our screens looking for someone to blame, how women are disproportionately affected by online harassment. This event, compared to the first one 21 years ago, has a much different feel, because we are all more acutely aware of the needs and engaged in creating solutions and possibilities for equality, which is exciting and powerful. At WIN, we want to seize this moment and opportunity. Beyond International Women's Day, we want to engage you in our work at WIN. To celebrate our accomplishments and inspire each other, Women in Niagara host events like today's International Women's Day celebration, the annual Women in Business Awards, and quarterly Winspirational Women events showcasing local women in our leadership. In terms of advocacy, WIN has advocated for the Government of Ontario to either sign a federal childcare agreement or develop a unique Ontario solution. That was and is our official position. We have also made a delegation to Niagara Regional Government supporting a motion to condemn violence and harassment of politicians and public servants, and urged our council to support this motion, but also similarly to see it as a start of the process and not the end. We must act to stop the spread of violence and intimidation in politics, to protect those who serve the public, and to prosecute those who seek to undermine our democracy. We are happy to announce that the Seat at the Table program is back, although it does look a little different this year. Niagara Region's Seat at the Table program aims to address barriers that women and gender diverse individuals face when running for municipal office, while also improving the environment once elected. The program's goal is to increase the number of women and gender diverse people, particularly from underrepresented groups, elected for municipal government in Niagara by promoting by promoting understanding, awareness, and confidence through education, mentorship, and support to those interested in running for election. The initiative is funded by Women and Gender Equality Canada in partnership with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and is in partnership with Niagara Region, City of St. Catharines, YWCA, Future Black Female, Services for Humanity, Muslim Senior Circle, and of course, Women in Niagara. The first workshop will be a virtual event on April the 7th at 6 p.m. Please stay tuned to our social media for more details. If any of these programs sound exciting, or if you'd like to learn more about volunteer opportunities with WIN, please follow us on social media or find us on the GNCC website. I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce the members of the Women in Niagara Council who are responsible for all these programs and events. Our Vice Chair, Jamie Giles, Commercial Banking at TD. Our Past Chair, Ruth Unruh, Leadership Development Coach. Karina Massicott, GNCC Staff Liaison. Leslie Calvin, Positive Forward Motion, Life Leadership and Transition Coach. Isabella Camillo, Goodman School of Business at Brock University. Cheryl Johnson, Sullivan Manny LLP. Nora Kalb, Innovate Niagara. Cheryl Matthews of Canadian Tire Financial Services. Sarah Pertula, Community Crew. Melanie Sodka, Capacity Creator Corp. And Marcia Young from St. John's Ambulance. Now a message from our sponsor, Penn Financial Credit Union, followed by the presentation of the International Women's Day Award by the Chief Retail Officer, Teresa Bird.
Today, on behalf of the Women in Niagara Council, it is my privilege to present the International Women's Day Award to a woman who has spent her life making the world more beautiful in every imaginable way, Jen Harper. Jen is best known as the founder of Indigenous-owned and founded, digitally native, St. Catharines-based cosmetics company, Cheekbone Beauty. For the last 8 years, Cheekbone has produced stunning beauty products, but from the very beginning, it was never just another makeup company. It literally started as a dream when Jen woke one morning in January 2015 with an image of rosy-cheeked, smiling, and happy Indigenous girls still in her mind. She immediately set to work making it a reality, but she knew before she began that it had to be sustainable, ethical, and a business that gives back and helps the community it is a part of, embodying her Anishinaabe values of sustainability and generosity. In just a few short years, Cheekbone Beauty has seen phenomenal growth. In the beginning, as Jen put it, people must have said, "This chick is nuts. Who does she think she is going into this space?" She juggled a day job in food sales marketing with nightly study of cosmetics and Indigenous culture at home. And now, the brand launched by a self-taught Indigenous entrepreneur is famed everywhere, and you'll see it on the shelves of Sephora next to products from Dolce & Gabbana, Clinique, or Estee Lauder. Biodegradable packaging, locally sourced ingredients, plant-based vegan products, and adherence to the strictest cleanliness standards are part of the ethical regime that Cheekbone runs by. It's those standards that have made consumers able to buy with confidence, knowing that their products are not only world-class, but earth-saving. That alone would have made the company remarkable, but it is not enough for Jen. Her success did not come easily. It is one thing to recognize the achievements of those who've had a head start in life, but that is not her. Overnight success isn't real, she once said. It's actually blood, sweat, and tears. From a troubled past, she worked hard to build herself and her business to the success story that we have come together to recognize today, struggling to overcome the forces set against her and make her way in spite of them. Her history, in some ways, mirrors that of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, The recent discovery of unmarked graves in residential school grounds across the country has reminded us of the appalling mistreatment of Indigenous peoples. Jen's own grandmother, Emily Paul, was a survivor of the residential school system, and Jen, like all Indigenous people, grew up shaped and scarred by the past traumas that she did not even see. We hope that as Canada struggles to come to terms with its past, that there will be a future unmarred by this victimization. Jen does not wait passively for that future to arrive. She has used Cheekbone Beauty as a vehicle to bring it closer. To date, Cheekbone has donated over $150,000 to organizations that support Indigenous youth and women across the continent, such as the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society. The company has partnered with One Tree Planted to support reforestation, not just to restore the natural beauty of the land, but to protect the lands on which Indigenous people hunt and gather food, to protect ecosystems and to fight climate change. As a brand, Jen now estimates that Cheekbone has planted 3,200 trees. Keeping in line with her Anishinaabe roots, Jen launched a less waste line of lipsticks in 2020, Sustain Lipstick. Cheekbone's aim is to make a difference in the lives of Indigenous youth through donations addressing the educational funding gap and to create a space in the beauty industry where Indigenous youth feel represented and seen. From her Anishinaabe heritage, Jen has taken the lessons that one must support one's community, take only what one needs, and leave enough for one's descendants to enjoy. We've chosen to recognize and honor her, not for the remarkable business, but for showing the world a better way to do business, a way that makes entrepreneurship not just a way to make a living, but a way of life. It gives me great pleasure to present this award to her, knowing it is only a fraction of what she deserves. Please welcome Jen Harper.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is incredible. Thank you so much, Women in Niagara, Penn Financial. You just made me sound really awesome. So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we need to hear that. And that was amazing. And I cannot thank our community enough. Niagara is my home. I grew up here. I have raised my family here. I have healed here. I'm so grateful for the business community in Niagara. Your continued support over these past years has been felt. So I'm Jen, the founder and the CEO of Cheekbone Beauty Cosmetics, and we are based on the original homelands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As mentioned, my family is from the Bear Clan in our Anishinaabe culture, and we are guardians of the communities. And so for thousands of years, my people have been the keepers of this land that surround these beautiful Great Lakes. Cheekbone Beauty was built on what is called the 7 teachings that has been passed down from generations of Anishinaabe people. So the Cheekbone Beauty's core values are wisdom, honesty, respect, love, bravery, humility, and truth. And that system has been used by Anishinaabe people as a way to conduct their lives. It is what is known as Anishinaabe ways of knowing and being. Cheekbone Beauty is on this mission, and our vision is to help every Indigenous youth on this planet see and feel their value in the world while we get to craft sustainable color cosmetics using our Indigenous ways of knowing. And in January 2015, it's when I had that life-changing dream. Several Indigenous little girls covered in lip gloss. I woke up that night, grabbed my laptop, and began what is still the foundation of our business plan to this day, using a portion of profits to support Indigenous youth. And yes, to date, we have donated over $150,000 in cash and in-kind donations to several organizations that support youth in their education. But realizing that the world didn't need just another lipstick brand was always at the forefront of my mind, but it did need a brand that authentically represented Indigenous faces and created products that are good for us and the planet and for every skin tone. Cheekbone Beauty is boldly dismantling the idea of what Indigenous looks like. Fast forward to today, and our mission has never changed, but I have as a leader. 18 months into the beauty industry, and I could see the need for change. The suppliers were far too secretive about the processes and sourcing of raw ingredients. So I started working with my own contract chemists and sustainability experts in 2018. And at the same time, that's when I began my first meetings with Sephora Canada. I left those meetings armed with new plans and new ideas, reimagining packaging to be more sustainable and using better ingredients. And in March 2020, as mentioned, that's when we launched our first ever we made this lipstick, Sustain Lipstick, the formulation where we sourced all the ingredients. I was hooked. I am now obsessed with understanding the science behind how everything is made, along with indigenous wisdom and knowledge of all of the plant medicines that exist on our planet. Our Sustain line was completed that year, and we have made so many more products since. Innovation is at the heartbeat of the work that we do here at Cheekbone Beauty. We are the recipients of over $500,000 in research and innovation grants, and a current IP pending project we are working on, in which involves this gorgeous, rich Niagara fruit land that we're all on today, and converting regional byproducts into actives like resveratrol that are found in many fruits. And we just completed our first mold project using a refillable palette option. And in January of 2021, we built our own cosmetics lab here in Niagara. Out of frustration from outsourcing things and outsourced labs, we hired a full-time chemist and worked with a team of sustainability chemists that help us reimagine and redesign beauty through this Indigenous lens using Western science. Our community is incredible. We just launched in Sephora.ca in September of 2021. And on November 15th of 2021, we launched in 9 Sephora flagship stores in Canada with a campaign called Write the Story, which was the most beautiful campaign I've ever seen. I'm not behind that work, but the agency that supported and did that for us was amazing. It is the first time in history that an Indigenous brand had a campaign at that size. The ad spend on it was $1 million, which we won, and billboards across the country, from the Gardiner Expressway to the Victoria, and also on a national TV commercial, which has never happened from an Indigenous brand before. So we're really, really proud of that. Cheekbone Beauty has done a stellar job in creating our Sustain line of clean vegan products, and our line truly demonstrates the bolder side of nature's hues, as you can see on my lips today. The foundation of Cheekbone's beauty success is based on our Indigenous roots, along with my passion and drive to see more representation and to take better care of our planet. And in 2019, I won the Woman of the Year award from Chatelaine Magazine. In 2020, made the Glossy Top 50 Beauty CEOs in North America. And in January of 2022, this past January, we won the number 4 spot on the list of Canada's most innovative companies, where Shopify is in the number 1 spot. This is absolutely bananas. How does a woman build this kind of business? How does a little Ojibwe girl who struggled for most of her life make this happen? Well, it's the love and support of a community, and mine starts here in Niagara. Miigwech, thank you.
Congratulations, Jen. To honor you today, we would like to present you with a beautiful painting done by local artist Renu Decuna. This piece is called Simply Beautiful. Regardless of the challenges this survivor has faced, she embraces her beauty, feeling confident in her long black hair. We also have these lovely earrings made by local artist and entrepreneur, April Mitchell Boudreau of Lofton. My necklace, also Lofton. We would love to know more about you, Jen, and your story. So we do have a couple of questions. Now, you did give us a little bit of background, but we'd love to know more about Jen in the early years. So you're from Niagara, schooling, where did you attend? Let's get to know younger Jen.
Well, name a school in Niagara. I probably attended it. So I think I went to like, I don't know, 10 different schools in the region, but I graduated from Niagara District High School and went on, moved to Toronto, started working, and then tried going to Ryerson, but ended up dropping out of the business program probably about 18 months in. And then came back to Niagara, started working, and then met my husband here and got married here and started a family. And then so career wise, it was kind of turned out that I didn't find all of my career paths until a lot later in life after my kids were born.
And so we heard the story of your dream that really prompted you to start this business. But obviously, there's a lot more work that is built into creating a company. So can you tell us the story of how Cheekbone was created?
Yeah, so at the time, the career path that I was in the food industry. I'd been in the hospitality space for most of my life, and I was working in sales and marketing. And then I really learned something key, or in that time period, was I was working for a broadline distribution company, then for a seafood company, out of Toronto. And what both did, and in this industry is very common, was sort of purchasing products from manufacturers and then relabeling things and branding them as your own companies, as many small businesses often do. So that's like the process is like white labeling or private labeling. And we did that in the food sector. After that dream, obviously, I had to figure out, okay, like if, this is it, I got to make this lip gloss. I don't know how to make lip gloss. How is that going to happen? So what I did realize, I discovered really quickly with like a quick Google search, that the beauty industry is very much the same way. If you find articles, it's well known that it's really 5, 7 conglomerates that operate and manufacture most of the products on the shelves. So then I set on this path. I'm like, I'm going to try to find a manufacturer right here in Canada, and create a brand, which was like, in the sense of getting the logo made, the design, what I wanted the look and feel to be like, and then because discovering that the product part was not that difficult. However, I only approached it that way. One, because I didn't know much. Remember, I had no experience in the beauty industry, didn't know much about the beauty industry whatsoever, and really had no idea about ingredients at the time. Now, I can have a lot more in-depth conversations about how things are made and created. But back then, I was just seeking a product that I knew was good and people would like, and that was how our brand had to start. Really, without any capital or investment, there's not a lot a small entrepreneur can do. It's a way to start, but I don't believe any healthy business that's going to really differentiate itself or set itself apart from something that's happening in industry could go on like that. But I knew that that's how I had to test the market. Like, it's how I had to prove that the world would want Cheekbone Beauty to exist. And then the more research I had done and the more I was learning was like, okay, then I would start asking questions to these suppliers. And they are, one, don't tell you very much, and ultimately have discovered that even a lot of these people are not manufacturing here in North America. They're definitely outsourcing and taking things overseas into inferior factories with ethical issues. And so the more I learned about that, it was super frustrating. And then just decided, like, no, we're gonna figure out how to make lipstick right here in St. Catharines, and figure out how to create partnerships so that we can have the actual information about every ingredient that our customer is putting on their face.
That's so amazing, Jen. And so we all know there's a popular word that came out of 2020, 2021 was the word pivot, right? So lots of pivoting, everybody's pivoting their business. How many pivots have you made since starting this company?
Oh my gosh, like a bazillion. However, the one thing, as mentioned, that has never changed is our mission and our vision. But we had to make a ton of pivots. For like pandemic, we were selling lipstick. People are putting masks on their face. Right away had to make a decision to start to move to the eye category, because we didn't know how long we'd be wearing masks for. We certainly didn't think it was this long. So thankfully we did make that decision. But the entrepreneurship is just constantly about making decisions. And I think the best thing you can do is figure out how to make them the fastest as possible, and just keep moving quickly, because the markets move so fast.
It's very true. And so you had mentioned like coming into the cosmetics world was difficult to break into. And so obviously, were there biases you faced, and how did you overcome or break those biases?
Yeah, for sure. Like this is, not having the experience here. Number one, I think people definitely have no idea really what we're doing or what we're up to, which I think is totally cool, because I just want to fly under the radar and then surprise everybody later. That's my style. But we're in this industry that I think is run by like 5 French dudes in France, right? The entire beauty industry, that's like where it all operates and comes from. And so there's not a lot of women that run things in the space. There's a lot of us here in the industry, but in terms of who has all the sort of the power, I think that's where it really lies. And so, of course, there's going to be biases. One, not from the industry. I come from a BIPOC community, so that looks different. And I think that's honestly, though, what has set us apart from what everybody else is doing. Being this naive, and really in some ways, really, really naive, has helped me challenge what maybe has always been done a certain way. Because this whole concept of, starting businesses using white label, that's been happening for centuries. But I think the consumer deserves to know a lot more about the products that they're using. And the customer has the power. Like, this is where our communities truly need to understand. You get to decide what brands succeed and what ones don't. And so you need to align yourself with people that are choosing to be more transparent about the things that they're making and creating. Otherwise, we're just, we're never going to get rid of the junk, so to speak. And so there's biases all the time. I personally, I always say this, like Pollyanna, I can't focus on that though, right? Like, I just have a job to do. This is my lane. I'm here to make makeup and do it this way. And I choose not to focus on any of the negative stuff that happens around me, or I'd be pretty darn depressed in the fetal position in my closet or something like that.
We definitely don't want that, but absolutely. I mean, it's just such a tough, as an entrepreneur, it's just so tough. And so, as you mentioned, makeup, which many people would have thought otherwise, is still a male-dominated industry. And so you've talked about some ways that you navigated that. Can you talk about experiences where you've had support of males and male advocates?
Yes, and I'm always so excited to share this story. For anyone who is like me, and really, as much as you see me speaking publicly and it feels like I can do this naturally, I was definitely not born this way. I feel like I was definitely born an introvert. And so networking and all of these things are literally the most uncomfortable thing for me. But every time I've put myself out at an event and talked to somebody, and I always just ended up meeting the right person at the right time. Doug, my mentor, like guider, has been just such a pivotal piece of the success of me as an entrepreneur and the success of our brand. So Doug Langmuir and his wife, Suzanne, his ex-wife founded a company called Bite Beauty. You may have heard of it. It's on the shelves of every Sephora, I think, around the world now. He sold it to Sephora in 2014. I did a speaking event at the Globe and Mail Center in Toronto back in 2018. And this young woman came up to me and she said, "I know Doug Langmuir. Would you like me to connect you. I think he could help the business you're trying to create. I said, absolutely yes. And the rest is really history. Everything that our first chemist we hired came from Bite Beauty here at Cheekbone Beauty. A ton of machinery we bought. So when Sephora bought Bite, they left Canada to take all their operations to their Kendo plant in California, but their operations from Toronto were selling off and auctioning off all of this incredible equipment to make cosmetics. And Doug, set me up and told me what to go in and bid on. And so we bought tons of stuff to actually make and manufacture products one day here right in Niagara. And he has been just so supportive, especially in the fostering of our relationship with Sephora. Like, I'm dealing with an entire new world. I've never been in retail. I've never had to build retail wholesale relationships, albeit I had an excellent career in sales and had great customer relationships there. It was an entirely different industry. And so this is new conversations, new understandings. And so he has been such a great guide and for me how to navigate this space, and truly been there when bad hiring decisions and just to have someone who's done it before. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And he happens to be a man who said to me straight away, I am a white old dude. Do you really want my support? I can ask Suzanne, his ex, if you want to work with her. And the fact that he even asked that, I was like, no, our 100%. I want to continue to keep our relationship going and have these conversations with you. And so that has been pivotal. And if I didn't show up at that event, if I didn't hide out in bathrooms at networking events, sometimes it takes me 20 minutes to get comfortable, then none of that would have ever happened. And so anyone listening who struggles with that, please just get out there and do it, because it could change your life.
So Jen, this year's theme, of course, is Break the Bias. Can you talk about representation and why it is important?
So here's the best story I have. Why is it so important? I think everyone knows my personal story and the biggest loss. And I think why I've been driven so hard to keep working on a business in such a competitive space was the loss of my brother, BJ. He took his own life in 2016, just before we launched the brand. And he used to send me, not kidding, the DMs, text messages of any Native person from anywhere around the world, or Indigenous person for that, if they were an athlete, a celebrity, just anyone that was doing something so cool. And it wasn't until after he was gone, obviously, that I realized how powerful that was. When you see someone that looks like you, it is only then that you believe that you can fill that spot or do something like them. And so I honestly and fully believe that representation saves lives. And specifically when I think about my Indigenous communities, the rate of suicide amongst our people is dramatically higher than the national average. We all know, we don't have to get into that conversation, but that comes from the trauma that exists in the past. And I believe that when we all get to see more people that look like us, we'll all be better off for it.
Absolutely agree. And so how do you make sure that differences are valued and celebrated?
Oh, that's a great question. It's still challenging, I talk about being sort of in that lane and not looking at other things. And so as a business all the time, we've just made a decision to just focus on our lane. However, as the leader of a company inside Cheekbone, people are allowed to be who they are, outside their work lives. There's definitely freedom of expression within our company. And so I want this to definitely feel like a really safe place for people to build their careers.
And just kind of building more on that. So can you tell us how companies and their leaders can help break the bias and create a world that is more diverse, equitable, and inclusive?
I wish I had all of the answers. I really don't.
It's a big question. It's a big question.
I certainly do not. but I think just by paying attention to it, I think for a long time, maybe none of us have paid attention to the fact that, sure, we have the, 10 gentlemen in this role. Why have we never had a woman? Or if it's just noticing those things and then making a concerted effort as agencies and businesses to change that.
Can you tell me more about the philosophy of the circular economy, and how we can better support the earth through our business actions?
Yeah, again, don't have all the answers. And it's really interesting. True sustainability, like hands down, none of us are buying anything ever again, right? Like we're not. Like I'm sure if anybody went into their home right now, you don't need another shirt, nor do I, nor do we need another piece of jewelry. But in the sense of if we're going to make purchases, what can businesses be doing to be a little bit more thoughtful in the brands that they're supporting or purchasing from? Well, that takes customers becoming a lot more curious and asking questions. I don't think consumers realize how much power they have, as mentioned earlier, but you have the ability to ask every person that you're making a purchase from, and don't let someone just tell you something sustainable. We call it receipts here at Cheekbone Beauty. We're in the process right now of becoming B Corp certified, which I think is like the top goal. If you want a gold star for sustainability, that's how a company gets it. But you need to show me receipts. Like, just don't tell me you're sustainable, show me how. And I think that that's the action and the path that all of us have to take. So stop the BS, the greenwashing that happens, because it happens all the time in all industries. But we really need to back up what we're talking about with actual facts and statements, and being authentic and humble, like realizing there is no silver bullet to sustainability. There's no one solution. You'll look at our packaging choices, they're all based on a different reason for why that is the choice at that moment in time. For instance, our mascara, still in plastic. One, because I could put wood around that plastic, I could put aluminum around that plastic, but now I feel like I'm being unauthentic because that's all a brand is doing to pretend they've done something sustainable. Because when we get to the waste management level of that, no one can separate those things at the recycling center here in Niagara, right? And only 8% of things that we actually put in our recycling bin, 8%, think about that. So we're all being duped even by this philosophy of idea of recycling, that's the solution. It's absolutely not. So it's just ask more questions, because I can tell you I've been asking questions for the last 4 years, and the things I've learned, it's frustrating, and it's actually truly heartbreaking when you learn the truth about how most industries are run and operated. But as a small business with a very small budget, I'm not a giant conglomerate beauty brand, we're doing the best we can with what we have right now.
Yeah, that's amazing though. So Jen, it's and you had mentioned that you have some innovative ways of using products that come from the earth, or innovative solutions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sorry, what you're doing? That part of the circular economy. So what does that mean? Like, and it took me, so it means this whole idea of doing things in a circle. So think about it, taking something that we're making it instead of, so we use a concept, it's called life cycle thinking or life cycle analysis. And that's from the harvesting of the raw ingredient to the end of the life of a product, what is happening to it. So at Cheekbone Beauty, we've defined it that we want to do the best that we can so nothing is ending up in a landfill. And so that's all the parts, pieces. You'll hear us talk in the future when we talk about that mold, we're making it mono. Mono means all one material. And so that is easier recycled or easier biodegraded or easier composted. Those are the reasons why a product needs to become mono. So we think about from the beginning to the very end and everything that's happening in between. And then in essence, the best option generally is how things are repurposed, reused, and can be used for something else. So we think of this project that we're really, we have our funding that came from IREP. We're working with a local winery, Henry of Pelham. They're giving us their agri waste from grape seeds and stems. So excited about this future project. And Niagara is going to this is just the beginning of that. You're going to hear so much more in the future. And we're pulling active ingredients from waste. So instead of it, turning into just full waste, but you can reuse some items in that for another thing. So it's just that idea of literally using everything and reusing things when you can.
So amazing for sustainability, for everything. It's just so amazing to hear these partnerships that come out of, totally different products, yet you come together so nicely for the same purpose, right? So it's amazing. So you talked about some male advocates who helped you in your career. Do you have any other role models, mentors, or sponsors, supporters?
Yeah, I have I feel like I'm really fortunate. I have an amazing husband, number one, who is just epic in terms of what he does for our family and how that supports a business. How from the beginning of Cheekbone Beauty, he did everything from IT to fixing leaky whatevers or something, right? Building the lab, helping us build that. So just an epic life partner, and husband and father of my kids. So I'm so grateful and realize that for partnerships like that, that part of it doesn't come easy for many people. And so I'm definitely so blessed to have that in my life, and an amazing family. And then community, the business community here in Niagara has just been supporting us from the beginning. And that is, and even when I just think of that, that kind of support, I don't think people really know how much it matters to help foster a small little brand with just an idea. Like I said back then, people are like, this is crazy. Who you've never been in that? What are you doing? And a great story is a friend who's a professor at Brock and also a teacher at Niagara College. She was the first person I told about this idea, and her first response to me was, how much money do you need? What can I do to help? Right? Not that, we don't expect that from everybody. That was awesome. And I didn't take any money from her or anything like that, but it was just like having people believe in you, I think is what I'm trying to say, in a long, convoluted way, is just that having someone believe in you is so powerful.
Yeah. Jen, if you don't mind, we actually had a question come in from the audience, because we have a little bit of time, but so what the question was, what kept you going in times of adversity?
Yeah. In all honesty, it's the purpose in losing my brother. He's been the driving force, that pain. And I know I'm not the first entrepreneur that's had a painful situation, and I've heard other entrepreneurial or people in life, when we have something like that happen, it definitely becomes something that pushes you to keep going. Because I had to work at that sales marketing role for 3 years while doing this on the side. And I finally, when we had got an investor and I was able to quit in August of 2019, we went to Italy as a family, and I literally collapsed there. Yet I was still doing the banking deals with them transferring the money and But when it was finally done, I laid on the beach. I mean, what a fantastic place to collapse, right? Is in the Amalfi Coast, of course. But I was oh, and I sat, and then it took me a couple months to just realize that is unsustainable. I do not recommend that for anyone, but it was my way of dealing with the pain of losing someone that I loved. And his words, when I started to tell him about building Cheekbone Beauty, his eyes lit up, and he never had heard of another Indigenous person starting a business like this. And, it was just that idea of doing something that's making a really cool product, but then supporting something in at the same time, and my only example that I had as another business that I was paying attention to was like Tom's shoes. I was like, wow, that's so neat. Like it's like this one for one model. Like we can create healthy business models that are based on this idea of giving back, that was possible. And not happy with my career anymore in the food space and really needing to leave that. And just having this all fall into place at the right time. But again, don't recommend it. Not sustainable to work 100-hour work weeks and dealing with grief like that. But that's definitely what's kept me going. Now that I'm just doing this, what keeps me going is I have 8 checks to write every week to pay people. We have millions of Indigenous kids that still need to see themselves in a brand, and we're getting to we're making epic, incredible products. Like our face pencils, the thing that we launched last August, is the most incredible product that any human being will ever try. I will stand by this. And they're going to change the industry. Like it is so sustainable, and it is such an efficacious, not a foundation, not a concealer. It's so hard to explain and market this product, but it is so darn good that it needs to be on everyone's faces. And it's just super fun to do that, and then work on these really, really cool innovation projects. And like I'm, pop in the lab, and Lexi's in there, and it's like this disaster, but it's this disaster of like awesomeness, because she's just like, we won't joke around here. If there's a color of a lipstick we like from another brand, we're reverse engineering it, right? And trying to figure out, what did they do here? What did they do here? And cosmetics, sadly, unfortunately, the INCI list, or that's the ingredient listings, are all on the side of a package. So if you have a chemist, we can pretty much figure out how to make anything, which is so awesome. And I failed grade 9 science. So there's hope for anyone to build a lab.
Oh my goodness. We actually just had a few more questions, if you don't mind, Jen. How can we inspire the next generation to become leaders and have a voice?
By example, like 100%. I think of, parenting, literally the hardest job ever. And the only thing I can do for my kids, like it's not me giving them the long rant, but it's by my life example, is the best way that they're going to learn.
And so we often hear that social media is detrimental to mental health of girls and women. So in an ideal world, what role can social media play to strengthen women's position within society?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. And I feel like the speed at which messages and images are sent, very powerful, but it's all going to boil down to what message and what image, right? And that's where we have to redefine, or like, let's bring it back to who we are and what we want to share out there with the world. I did when we just recently talk about using less filters here, and not having even our user generated content, if it's over filtered, we don't even want to share it anymore, because like, this isn't real. Like it's not even a real person anymore. And I understand everyone has the right to choose and use those things if they want, right? I think I have my filter here on Zoom. Touch up face, little bit, yes please. Depends on the day and how much sleep I've had. But it's just like, in reality, I have a daughter too, right? And I have nieces and nephews, and it's like, what images are we really putting out there? And it's okay. Like, I don't know, I'm tired of the messages, and maybe because now I'm over 40 that, and over 40 is getting closer to 50. But I feel like redefining the messages that we send, like that, these lines, like, I've lived a life and I've earned this, right? And I'm okay with them. And so why isn't everyone else?
Definitely, just accepting our own beauty and how it is, and the more naturalness of it, which is amazing. And then, so if you look down the road 10 years from now, is it better for women? Is it worse for women? What do you think?
Oh, wow. I don't know. Of course we want it to be better, but I don't know the answer. But hope, right?
Right, definitely. And so we just have a couple minutes left, but we're all dying to know about Cheekbone, of course. You had mentioned the partnership with Sephora, anything coming or new products or anything you can share with us?
Yeah, so you have the full insights on the most I've ever told about our Niagara project so far. And for Sephora, if you've been in the stores, they have a clean section. Cheekbone's goal right now, we have those 9 podiums that will be redesigned and back in 9 of those Sephora stores with more products, which is really exciting because that Canadian partnership is continuing. But we want Sephora USA because they decide that clean, planet positive shelf space, and that's where we want our brand to sit, and that's decided by the Sephora USA people. And so we've had several meetings with them, and we know it's going to be this year. I just don't know when.
Well, we don't want to get too many details because, of course, we all love surprises. So we just can't wait to see what comes. And we just want to thank you so much, Jen, for all the work you do in your community, your love for community, your giving back to community. We just love your company, your organization, and we look forward to seeing the company grow and flourish. Definitely even more than it already has. And so we're just so excited for you, and just thank you so much for being part of our day today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
And so we'll be right back with our programming after this short message.
United Way is honored to once again be part of the International Women's Day celebration in Niagara. We know that women are more likely than men to experience poverty and financial hardship. For many in Niagara, paying for basic necessities, affording quality childcare, and ensuring rent and utility bills are paid for is next to impossible. We also recognize that some women face additional challenges based on their race, ethnicity, citizenship, status, sexuality, gender identity, and/or ability. Acknowledging that a bias exists in our community is the first step. The next is investing in opportunities for women and girls to improve their overall well-being and advocating for gender equity. United Way supports programs providing shelter to women and their families, specialized counseling, job training, and financial literacy. These programs can help empower women by lifting them out of vulnerable situations. By investing in children and youth, we can impact the lives of young women and help them build a positive self-image. United Way recognizes the importance of equity in our community, and your help can get us there. One inspiring story I will share with you comes from Michelle, someone who experienced the same hardships that many in Niagara continue to face today.
Because of my past and some alcohol and drug addiction, I ended up living in the streets for 4 years. I would always utilize any resources out there, like food banks, shelters, and day centers. So I became familiar with United Way from that perspective. Eventually, I began volunteering to give something back. Today, I'm no longer a hard drug user. I'm 62 years old, and I'm alive. So that's a success story.
The road towards a more equitable world for women and girls will be long and challenging. However, there are ways we can make immediate impact to help those in need. This year, United Way is once again running our Period Promise campaign to help period poverty. Many in Niagara cannot afford period products in addition to the many expenses they have each month. More than a quarter of the individuals that we serve indicated that they had gone without access to menstrual products for an extended period of time. Periods are a fact of life for many of us. Having the resources to help should be a right, not a privilege. Let's break the period stigma and protect the health of vulnerable people in Niagara. Visit our website for detailed information on how to get involved and where you can drop off products today. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. If you haven't had a chance to support United Way's Period Promise campaign, there is a link in the virtual lobby. Any contribution goes a long way to provide safety, dignity, and belonging for women, girls, and people who menstruate. As I mentioned earlier, we like to collaborate, and so I'd love to tell you about an upcoming event. Please join us in person at Innovate Niagara's Women in STEAM event on March 31st, where we'll explore how art enhances science, technology, engineering, and math, hence STEAM. WIN is excited to be a partner of Innovate Niagara, and we look forward to seeing you at the Stone Mill Inn for some networking, entertainment, and insightful speakers. The link to register for this event can be found in the chat. Now, we're just going to take a quick break. Please head over to the photo booth, get a drink, snack, stretch your legs, and we'll see you back at the main stage in 10 minutes.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Ruth Unruh, WIN Council founder and past chair, and I hope you all had a chance to support local and visit the marketplace or take a selfie over the break. I also just want to mention, shameless plug here, that I host a radio show on Saturday mornings on 610 CKTB AM in Niagara, and my guest this week is going to be Jen Harper from Cheekbone Beauty. So that's at 12:30 on Saturday. Just thought I'd mention that. And now I'd like you to please welcome Diana Hewson, Regional Councillor from Pelham, to introduce our guest speaker today. Diana.
Niagara Region's Economic Development is honored to once again co-title sponsor the GNCC's International Women's Day. Today is the celebration of female leaders who are building a culture of equality and empowerment for women within our business community. Although there's still much to be done to correct the underrepresentation of women, events like this are a step in the right direction. Through my experiences as the chair of the Niagara Region's Planning and Economic Development Committee, as well as being a member of the Women's Advisory Committee, it is important not only for myself, but for the entire Niagara region to take the time to celebrate you today. I'm so glad to see so many leaders and champions from Niagara. It shows how bright our future is. Representation matters, and keynote speaker Steph Guthrie is an incredible example of female empowerment. As a consultant, Steph helps groups in the public and nonprofit sectors expand their reach and deepen their impact, helps businesses ensure their products, services, and customer engagement are gender equitable. Her favorite type of consulting work is creating educational resources, which she has done for organizations including Mozilla, the National Film Board, and the White Ribbon Campaign. She also designs and leads workshops, develops content strategies, and produces events. As a public speaker and facilitator, Steph creates comfortable spaces to discuss uncomfortable things. Her passionate and accessible keynotes, panels, and workshops challenge long-held ideas about our collective consciousness in topics like rape culture, the internet, and inequality. She illuminates constructive and compelling alternatives to the status quo that help audience members envision their roles in culture change and galvanize them into action. Steph's work has been profiled by outlets including the Toronto Star, CB24, the Globe and Mail, and City News. And her comments on politics, feminism, technology, and pop culture have been featured on CBC's The Current, The National, ET Canada, Global News, and Flair magazine. Steph holds a Master's of Arts in Communication and Culture from York and Ryerson Universities. It's my pleasure to welcome Steph Guthrie.
Hi there, I'm so glad to be here today, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm here today to speak with you all about freedom of speech and how that intersects with gender and other aspects of identity. So I'm going to talk with you about what freedom of speech is and what it isn't, and what we can all do to create a society where everyone really does have the capacity to speak freely. So I'm not sure what spaces each of you are part of, but I'm sure that whatever they are, you know, those spaces are making decisions every day about which views to kind of include and which views to exclude. For example, you know, the Chamber of Commerce only hosts so many events like this per year, right? They couldn't possibly explore every single topic, host every single speaker. Every space, every group, every platform makes choices about which views to showcase. And interestingly, or I find it interesting, that these choices seem to really only come under fire when these choices only come under fire for supposedly violating freedom of speech when it's bigoted viewpoints like misogyny or transphobia that are being excluded. And I find that those who choose to allow bigoted viewpoints in their online and offline spaces, they'll often argue that it's, you know, it's all in the spirit of open debate. I hear that kind of thing a lot, that everything should be allowed and that that's what freedom of speech is. That's what objectivity is. But these simplistic understandings of free speech, they don't factor in who might be dropping out of the discussion because it dehumanizes them or compromises their safety. Words, I mean, words are never just words. They always have material implications of some kind. And when we allow hateful rhetoric to go unchecked, what we do is we create space for bigoted communities to mobilize and escalate online. And often that translates into bigotry offline, and it results in a deeply unsafe and unequal world for women, but also for pretty much every other marginalized group as well. So online communities, they've become a really key space where misogyny, white supremacy, and other kind of forms of bigotry will foment and get organized. There was a recent scan that was conducted by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. They looked at over 6,500 online forums that were dedicated to topics like misogyny, white supremacy, and other sort of bigoted worldviews. And they found that in these forums, Canadians were on average more active than users from the United States or the UK, the other sort of heavy hitter bigotry countries. And on one especially popular 4chan message board, Canadians were producing more content on average than any other country, period. So, you know, unfortunately, it shouldn't be a surprise when a major offline action springs up, like, for example, a convoy of trucks with swastika flags occupying the downtown of a major city for weeks on end. Attempting arson on apartment buildings in that downtown with the tenants of that building trapped inside, and threatening to sexually assault women who wear masks. These extremist communities in Canada, they've been growing online for quite some time, and we've been letting them do it with abandon. So it's really no shock that they're showing up offline too, and that they're showing up organized. The validation that bigots find in these online spaces, it's not just that the spaces allow them to get organized, they find validation for their views in these spaces, and that helps them to see their views as normal, right? And that helps them justify acting on those views in offline spaces. By the way, you're going to hear me use the term offline space a lot. That's because I don't call it real life, because what happens online is also real life. So when I say offline space, what I mean is basically any space that isn't on the internet. Now, if we want to look at some really ugly examples of how online bigotry translates into offline bigotry, we can look at the fact that many bigoted mass murderers were reportedly active in online fascist spaces before they committed their crimes, including Elliot Rodger in California, Dylan Roof in South Carolina, and here in Canada, Alec Minassian and Alexandra Bissonnette. All of them were active in online fascist forums. Now, these are obviously kind of the more extreme examples, right? But for every mass murderer, try and imagine, you know, how many of these folks are being emboldened by their online community to do something like groping a teen girl on public transit, or calling a woman politician a gendered slur at a public event, or pulling a Muslim woman's hijab off as she walks down the street. You know, so online bigotry, it translates into offline violence and intimidation. There's one particularly direct and kind of scary example that happened several years ago. There was a video of a feminist protester at the University of Toronto that went viral in a lot of men's rights online communities. And she was subjected to a very, I would say, brutal, prolonged, and vicious series of online attacks. A few years later, this young woman was shopping in her local LCBO. And one of the employees was active in these online men's rights spaces, and he recognized her. And he posted in one of these online spaces the surveillance video of her appearance in the shop, the location of the shop, and her real name. I, you know, unfortunately was a prize target in these communities myself, continue to be to some extent, although it's died down quite a lot, thankfully. But for several years, because I'm a vocal feminist and I work in this space, and mostly because I was a complainant in an online harassment trial against a local man, the verdict in this trial, it acknowledged that he was harassing me, but he was acquitted because the judge felt that it wasn't reasonable for me to fear for my safety. And the judge felt that my fear was unreasonable, partly because I had a public Twitter account, which he likened to inviting the world into your living room. And I don't know about you, but when someone's in my living room and they're saying things that are hurtful to me, I tend to be allowed to say, hey, this is my living room and you're not allowed to talk to me that way. Get out of my house. But I guess the judge didn't see living rooms that way. So the 2-year trial and Christy Blatchford's coverage of my testimony in the National Post, which was quite conservative, attracted a lot of attention from online fascist communities internationally, and they besieged me with harassment for years. When online hate is directed at you or a group that you're part of, even if it never translates into physical violence offline, the emotional trauma it causes is lasting and violent in and of itself, I would argue. I can't count the number of times that people on the internet told me to kill myself, threatened to dox me, tried to hack my website and social media accounts, called me gendered slurs, spelled out very sexually violent fantasies, or threatened to, rape or kill me. I won't tell you some of the specific comments that were made to me, but some of them will probably live in my head forever. It's really ugly stuff. And as you can imagine, all of this made the internet so hostile for me that I simply abandoned my Twitter account. I stopped doing media interviews because they always kind of would result in an uptick of harassment. And also gone for a really long time was the contact form on my website, because it was an open door for death and rape threats. But guess what? It was also the main way that clients tended to seek me out for projects. So the online hate had a direct economic impact on me, in addition to limiting my political expression. Now, online violence, it doesn't only bleed into our offline experience in terms of how it impacts your career and your economic opportunity, though. For me, I found that just the omnipresence of online harassment, it created this kind of panopticon effect where when I moved through the world, through public space, I never really knew who was watching me or when the violence online might turn into someone confronting me in person. So, when so many people are screaming at you on the internet, and that some of them, live in the same city as you, it's hard not to wonder if maybe one day someone's going to come up to you on your subway car, or pass you on while you're on your way to work, or they might be shopping at your grocery store. And I did get recognized sometimes, usually by people who supported me and wanted to commend me for what I was doing. But anytime somebody would recognize me in public, it would just make me think, well, who else can recognize me who doesn't support what I'm doing? And when am I going to be confronted? So I would find myself, sometimes I would be walking down the street with, my head would be down, my shoulders hunched, and my hair just like curtaining my face. And I'm not alone in this. I've spoken with a lot of women writers, pundits, politicians, just women with, public facing roles who share this anxiety when they're moving through public space. And especially in periods right after some of their work has gone viral. So, just imagine how this can impact, how it can discourage women from seeking positions of visibility and leadership, right? Especially if you're multiply marginalized, like trans women, Muslim women, Black women. The fear and anxiety that I would feel about the potential for a violent offline incident, it was fed by the reality of things like what happened to that feminist protester at U of T, or like what happened to a friend of mine a few years ago. She's a feminist activist who did a lot of online advocacy at the time around sexual violence. And one day someone came up to her on the street and threw coffee on her because they recognized her. So this complex set of threats, it means that too often women, we just stop participating in online and offline spaces because the cost of our participation is too damn high. And I don't see the freedom of speech brigade out to defend our rights to a platform. But of course they're not, because their entire goal is to shut us up. The people who harassed me during my trial, I would often hear them say that they hoped the trial would shut me up forever. And it's really interesting that they would often say that in the very same breath as saying that I was attacking freedom of speech. For a lot of these folks, frankly, freedom of speech just means freedom to say the most violent and offensive things they can possibly think of. And anyone who uses their own freedom of speech to say, this is not acceptable to me, is the enemy. And they've become very effective at using this sort of distorted concept of free speech to silence opposition to their ideas. In some cases, they have even strategically marshaled this distorted concept of free speech to win support for their cause from people with more moderate views. So, for instance, back in 2017, some of you might remember there was a motion that was making its way through the House of Commons to condemn Islamophobia. Now, if you remember this, you probably remember it was actually a pretty toothless motion at the end of the day. It wasn't going to like throw anyone in jail for expressing Islamophobic sentiment. It was basically just a motion for Parliament to say, we think Islamophobia is bad, you know, which I don't mean to dismiss, like that's important, but it wasn't going to like have an impact on anyone's freedom. It was just Parliament saying Islamophobia is bad. But that was scary enough for a number of Islamophobic lobby groups, including one called the Canadian Coalition of Concerned Citizens. And they were trying to organize to defeat this bill. In a call to action on Facebook, this group advised their followers to focus their protest signs on freedom of speech rather than criticizing Islam. Not because they had a problem with criticizing Islam, but because they believed most people didn't share their views on Islam, and the free speech message would resonate with more people. So they're explicitly and actively using this free speech thing as like a smoke and mirrors to dupe people into supporting a bigoted cause. Let's be real here. Freedom is not what's at risk in the vast majority of these cases. Generally speaking, we're not talking about infringements on someone's fundamental right to express their views. We're talking about whether they should be given a specific platform or a specific audience for their ideas. But platforms and audiences, they're privileges, not rights. Freedom of speech is never absolute. The ways that we use our freedom of speech sometimes conflict with other people's rights to, say, freedom of movement, freedom from discrimination, right to privacy, the list goes on. This is why talking about freedom of speech as an abstract principle simply doesn't work, because it erases the fact that in every situation where speech is exercised, there are actual people involved, and those people all have rights, and their rights don't always coincide. Now, I have the right to hold the views I'm sharing with you today. I do. But expressing them here to you, that's not my right. That's a privilege. I might have the right to express these ideas to my friend in her living room if she invited me over to hang out. But if she wanted me to leave because she didn't like what I was saying, it wouldn't be an infringement on my freedom of speech. Now, this idea of freedom of speech as everyone should be able to say everything all the time, no matter what, this pushes marginalized people like literally to the margins. And as women and racialized people, trans people, and other groups are pushed to the margins of online spaces so that bigots can get as loud as they want, the less our voices and stories are part of the public dialogue, right? The less people in the dominant groups empathize with us as fellow human beings and see the common ground they share with us, because we're not talking. The more justifiable it may then seem to inflict psychological, emotional, or even physical violence against us, because we're not as much a part of the public discourse. We're not as humanized. So what do we do about this? You know, first of all, I think we can recognize that there is no objective position. I'm sorry to say. You can either make the spaces you're part of safer for those with bigoted views, or you can make them safer for marginalized people. You get to choose, but there is no middle ground. Allowing everything all the time is not a middle ground. Freedom of speech, it's not just shaped by public policy or legislation, right? It's shaped by the standards that we set as community members for interaction in our communities. And that can look like, it can look like explicit codes of conduct for workplaces or groups that you're part of. Sure, it can be written down in policy like that, but it can also just be speaking up about what is and isn't okay with us. Deciding what kind of dialogue we will and won't include in our workplaces or on social media or in other online and offline spaces isn't a violation of freedom of speech. It is us using our own freedom of speech and freedom of movement to shape the world that we live in. And we must also exercise our freedom to listen to those who are most affected by bigotry in our communities so that we can learn how they'd like to see it addressed. I believe that we all have a role to play in building a truly inclusive and equitable society. And that means that speech that is truly free can't be legislated from the top down. It can only be created by us from the bottom up, upheld by our collective ears, voices, and hearts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steph. That was riveting, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your story, and also very much for your bravery, because of what you've been through, and you're still here to tell us this story, and you're still using your voice. And I think that is very inspirational for all of us here, because I think it's pretty easy to get shut down and allow yourself to silence your voice. And these are the voices we need. I want to spend a little bit, just a minute on, in your bio, we hear that you're a feminist advocate. And there's some of us that sort of struggle with this idea of what's an advocate, what's an activist, what to you does an advocate, a feminist advocate, mean?
What a great question. I think the answer to that might have been very different, 40 years ago. But now, because so many of us have access to be able to share our voices with the world through things like social media, I think that there's something to be said for the fact that we can all be advocates for whatever it is that we believe in, because we all, to differing degrees and in different ways, have some access to a platform now. And it's not just on social media, but really in any space that you're part of. I think advocacy is really, it's just speaking up for whatever it is that you believe in, right? So whether it's feminism, anti-racism, hopefully both of those things and many more. But I think anyone who speaks up for what they believe in, and especially in situations where it's a little bit scary to do that, like say a colleague has just made a sexist joke and you need to tell them that doesn't feel okay for you. That's advocacy, I would argue.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to also now spend a little bit of time on, you touched on politics and women getting involved in politics. And I think you also touched on any sort of front-facing, I'm in front of the mic kind of, journalists seem to be fodder for a lot of online harassment and that sort of thing. But in terms of politics, we know the importance of having women involved in politics. And we know the importance of having marginalized people, like all people need to be represented in politics. And I also know that you founded an organization called Women in Toronto Politics. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you started that? What was your motivation behind that?
Totally. So I started Women in Toronto Politics with a few friends over beers. It was a very sort of casual, like, hey, should we try organizing a panel discussion? Which is pretty cool, like activism. Sometimes you can, if you're just sitting at the right table at the right time with the right group of people, amazing things can happen. And Women in Toronto Politics arose from our frustration with, we were all kind of part of the local, Toronto Twitter politics community. We were all interested in, when Rob Ford was elected here in Toronto, there was a lot of, he made a lot of drastic changes in government that were very much, slashing social programs and very much not in the interest of feminism. There was quite a lot of folks kind of coming together to speak up about that and speak about how angry they were about that and how it wasn't the way that they wanted the city to be going. But the local sort of Toronto politics discourse was there was a real sort of gatekeeperiness to it. And if you didn't understand all the minutiae of how committees work and how decisions get made and what an in-camera meeting is and all this kind of stuff, you were there was this sense of being dismissed. And of course, especially if you were from a group that is marginalized and not seen as sort of being at the center of this world, like if you're a woman, that sense of being dismissed by the insiders was even stronger. So we created Women in Toronto Politics mostly to kind of create spaces that made getting involved in civic discourse feel a bit more friendly and accessible, especially to groups that are not traditionally at the center of it. So.
Which begs the question, how did you do that? How did you make that space friendlier? I've got a whole series of questions here, but I think in our pre-meeting, you and we talked a little bit about the fact that recently in Niagara, we've had a number of incidents of vandalism against some of our local politicians. And in particular, one of the female councillors for the city of St. Catharines had a rock thrown through her window while she was in the house sleeping with her husband and 2 children. It's very top of mind for us that these things are happening. So how did you sit down and determine, what's the best way to make it a safer space?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to be very responsive to what was happening in the community. So to incidents like the one that you described, we would try and be directly responsive to those things. So one example that happened during a municipal election, we had a really exciting municipal election where a bunch of young women, and particularly a number of young racialized women, a number of whom were Muslim, were running for office, which was really exciting. And we were very stoked to support them. Unfortunately, there were a number of people in Toronto who were racist and sexist and were not happy to support them. And they, had their signs, their campaign signs vandalized and their campaign offices vandalized, similar kinds of things to what you're describing. And what we did, we were a nonpartisan group. And what we did was basically incentivize our followers. We created a campaign called The City We Want, and encouraged people to find a candidate for Toronto Council who is being targeted by these vandals, and get out there and volunteer for her. Because the reality is they shouldn't have to be dealing with this in their campaign, and how much is having to deal with this kind of thing setting them back from, for example, white male candidates who are not getting their signs defaced, who are not dealing with those kinds of problems. They already have many advantages in running for office. And this is another advantage that they have, is that they don't have to deal with racist and sexist harassment. So how can we as a community offset that? Well, we can show up and actually volunteer for them or donate to them and resource their campaigns better, to kind of put them on a slightly more level playing field with the people they're competing against.
I want to ask you a question about, and I don't know if you have the answer to this or not, but as you're talking and as we're listening to you here, why do you think women are targets for this in a greater number? Why are we more disproportionately affected by this sort of freedom of speech, if you will? Why do you think that happens?
I mean, what a huge question. I think but it's an important one, right? I think that what happens online is a reflection of our broader society, right? It's everyone using the internet is a person off the internet too. And whatever ideas they're propagating on the internet are ideas that they carry throughout the rest of their life as well, right? And the fact of the matter is, we live in a misogynist society, and it always has been. Like, we live in patriarchy, and you can look at all the ways that this impacts women, from like the second shift of women still doing the vast majority of the childcare and housework in their partnerships with men. It manifests in obviously like us getting paid less than men for the same type of work. It manifests in intimate partner violence. There's so many examples of it. And I think that like being able to call a woman like a bitch or a C word or whatever online is just part of this entire larger societal trend of like beating up on women. Like I don't think it can be separated from the wider context of misogyny in our society.
We've spent some time talking about not just Women in Niagara Council, but at other tables as well, about public policy and how we need to change public policy in order to make our system more supportive of diversity and inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to the conversation that we had pre this event, something that you said has really stuck with me, and that is that public policy doesn't change hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm.
The question then is, how do we reach those hearts and minds in order to see that inclusivity and acceptance and diversity that we want to see? We also hear we need 30% female representation at various levels of government in order for the conversations to change. And I don't know if that 30% is, I think there's data that would indicate that is true, but wouldn't parity be nice also? And then let's apply an intersectional lens to that and see where we get. But how do you think that we do that? How do we change hearts and minds? How do we have that conversation?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, which is that we have to have a lot of conversations. I think, this brings me back to your first question about what makes an advocate, and my feeling that advocacy is just speaking up for what we believe in every sphere of our lives. And I think that is how we change hearts and minds, because in my experience, many, many years ago, I did a TED talk where I basically said that anytime someone is expressing an idea you don't agree with on the internet, you should stand up to them. And I still agree with some of the sentiment of that idea, but I would say how my perspective has shifted since then is I think that people tend not to listen to strangers on the internet. They tend to listen to their friends, their family, their coworkers, people with whom they have some degree of like mutual respect, some existing relationship, like where a relationship where there's some degree of care and understanding already. Those are the people that they're going to listen to. And so this is why I think it's important that we all speak up. And for example, like I have men friends who are very much feminist, but can sometimes be like a little nervous about speaking up when they're with a group of men and someone makes a sort of sexist remark. And I understand the nervousness. Like it can be hard to speak up. And, as a white person trying to like be an ally to racialized communities, I face kind of similar like nervousness about speaking up sometimes. But the reality is that your bros are going to listen to you, and they're not going to listen to me and my Twitter account, right? Like they're going to listen to you. So I think that for hearts and minds to change, and the thing is too, the more like you speak up in your group of bros, probably if there's a group of 5 guys there, you're probably not the only one who had an issue with that joke. There's probably another guy in the group who did too, and just was afraid to say something. And now, because you've said something, either he'll say something then, or the next time something like this happens, he will remember that you said something and he'll say, maybe I can say something here. So I think it really is a ripple effect, that the more each of us speaks up, the more we inspire the people who are part of our sphere of influence to speak up as well. So, and as far as changing hearts and minds, I think a lot of what we really need to do is there are a lot of people whose minds and hearts actually, I don't think, need to be changed, who aren't bigots, who are on the right side of history, but who need to be galvanized to speak up and be more active in what they believe in. So, so I think that the more each of us speaks up, the more we inspire those folks who are like, who respect women, to start speaking up too.
I think that's a really great point. And I think that actually our IWD recipient, Jen Harper, she talked about leading by example. And I think that that's what you're speaking to right now. If we see one person speaking up in a group where it might feel uncomfortable, but we, dig deep and we get brave and we get courageous, we're then, we'll find out that there's a lot more people that agree with us than disagree with us. But it takes somebody to make that first move. And sometimes that's the inspiration that we need and that we're looking for. And the next time it happens, then maybe we'll be more likely to speak up. So conversations continue, and we always just need to talk about it and keep it top of mind and front and center for some people. I'd like to spend a little bit of time now on creating a community of advocates. So we talked about what advocacy is, and we talked about some of the things that happen. But I know that, we talk about allyship, we talk about advocacy. How do we create a community? And I think in your keynote, you mentioned a society, which, that would be even better, right?
Yeah.
Best case scenario. But what are the tangible things that we can do? It's always nice when we come out of International Women's Day and we feel good and we feel inspired and we've celebrated this. But do we do anything? Like, what are the action steps that we can take? And I think all of us here are interested in helping, but we may not be interested in putting our name on the ballot or being behind the microphone. We might not be prepared to do those things, but there are other ways that we can help. And there are other ways that we can engage the rest of our community. Do you have any helpful hints in that?
Totally. I absolutely do. So it's so true that like not everyone can be the person who gets out front and puts their name on the ballot, or, you're totally right about that. And the great news is that there are a million roles to play. Everyone who does have their name on the ballot, they need like a community of support around them to be out front, because it can be scary out there. So some of the things that I have found helpful at various points when I've been out front and things have been really scary. So for example, there was this one period during my trial when a local coffee shop hosted an art show featuring art by the man who had harassed me. And there was some sort of response from the community of like, oh, really? Like, come on. But they kind of stuck to their guns and said, no, freedom of speech. We're going to host this guy's art show. And I had just kind of complained about it on Facebook, just like, and a whole, like hundreds of comments from my friends jumping in to say, okay, I'm taking a petition around to the other neighboring businesses to tell them about what's happening, give them context for it, and find out, like, are you okay with your neighboring business hosting this art show and attracting this type of audience? Like, and if not, maybe go and chat with your neighbor about it. And I had other friends going, because the Facebook page of this coffee shop was full of supportive comments from men's rights activists in like the UK and Australia. Like, they're never going to go to this coffee shop, but they wanted to let them know how happy they were that they were supporting a men's rights activist. So I had some friends who were jumping in on those Facebook comment threads and correcting the misinformation about my trial that some of these men's rights activists were propagating on the Facebook page. So kind of arguing with them. I had other friends who went into the coffee shop directly and said, hey, I used to come here all the time, and I don't think I'm going to anymore because I find it really upsetting how you've handled this whole thing. And then I also had other friends just, checking in with me, bringing me meals. There's all different ways that you can pitch in. And there's some really creative stuff that people can sometimes come up with. So like one time there was, I was dealing with a situation where I got a lot of like well-meaning questions that were really triggering to answer. So like I would get a male friend might message me and say like, I totally understand rape culture is a bad thing, but like sometimes women just like, I don't know why they have to like get so drunk at the bar. And then it's like, what do they think is going to happen? Or questions like that. Right. And for me to answer that question, it's triggering because I have been sexually assaulted in that way. And I know many women who have, and it takes a lot of energy for me to answer that question in like a calm and organized way that's going to actually educate that person. At the same time, I don't want them to walk away without being educated a little bit on why that perspective is problematic. So what I did is I reached out to a male friend of mine who was an ally and had a really good grasp of these issues around sexual violence. And I sent him the question and I said, Ben, would it be too much for me to ask you to write an answer to this person that I can then send to them and tell them that you're not me, tell them who's answering the question and why you're answering it and not me, because it doesn't take the same emotional energy for you as it does for me. And then I sent the person the answer. So it took some work off of my plate. And it also, I think, sent that person away with like an understanding of how better to approach these conversations in the future. So like there's a million roles, and these are all kind of background roles, but they're still very important to supporting the people who are kind of on the front lines.
How, a lot of us find it difficult to ask for help. You did that. You asked for help. And how do you ask for help? Who do you choose? How do you ask? I think it's bad. I mean, in that case, you had a specific job for that person to do. Sometimes it's not as clear as that. You know that you don't have the capacity, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, all of the above. You know that you might need some help, especially if you're front-facing, right?
Yep.
But people perceive front-facing people as, you're confident, you've got it together, you know what's going on, you're fine, you don't need anything. And then all of a sudden you're in a situation where you want to ask for help. How do you do that?
Oh, yeah, that question resonates for sure. I was that person who really struggled to ask for help and always wanted to project this image of like, I'm fine, don't worry. To be honest, I basically had to collapse in order to get to a point where I was ready to ask for help.
Probably not recommended that way, though.
No, right? Don't recommend that. But, I would say you don't always have to know what help you need. Sometimes it's more a matter of knowing who you can trust around you, who are the people who you believe want to help you, who care about you, have your best interests at heart. Gather those people around you and just say, guys, I'm losing it. I really need some help. I'm like so exhausted. I'm so scared and I don't know what to do. And having 2 heads are better than 1, 5 heads are better than 2. If you have your people around you who you trust, you can talk through it together and they can help you figure out what kind of support you need. So when I was getting ready for my verdict in my trial, I knew it was going to be really scary. I knew it was going to be really intense. I didn't really know what I needed, but I did. My partner and I kind of reached out to a small group of people we trusted. And we figured out, okay, one of the things I need is someone to monitor my Twitter mentions for like a week after the trial, because I don't want to have to look at it because there's going to be ugly stuff there. But if there's a death threat or a rape threat or something like that, I want it documented. So I had a couple of friends and they created a little schedule for different people to kind of keep an eye on my Twitter mentions and document that stuff for me. And I don't know if I would have thought of that if I didn't just like gather my people and say, guys, I need you, I need help. So sometimes you can just start with saying that you need help. Look at who can you trust, because it is hard to say, I need help. But if it's people you trust, they want to help you.
And the people that will get it when you say, I need help, and not just look at you and say, well, you've got to, you're and you're brave, you're going to be okay. Definitely. I think that's our takeaway too, is surrounding yourself with people that you can trust and who you feel safe with, and then build that army and go out and use your voice and be an advocate and create a community that is inclusive and diverse voices are being heard. Steph, I want to thank you so much on behalf of Women in Niagara for being our guest today and for celebrating International Women's Day 2022 with us and for helping us break the bias. And for those of you that are watching and listening, Steph Guthrie has a website, and it's stephguthrie.ca. And if you want to know more about her and see her TED Talk, you can go there.
Oh, bless
and
you.
Thank you very much. And now, Grace, back to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ruth. I would like to take a moment to thank our partners: United Way Niagara, Brock University, Faculty of Social Sciences, Bell, Innovate Niagara, Soundbox Niagara, Ontario Power Generation. Also, our marketplace sponsors: Beyond the Classroom, Nicole Lefebvre of Sensi, Niagara College Community Employment Services, Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games, the Post Office, the Savoy Room. And last but not least, I would like to thank our co-title sponsors: Penn Financial Credit Union, Niagara Region Economic Development. However, this day is not done or over yet. It is now time for networking, which is so important to help you grow your business, your impact, and connect with women in Niagara. Simply click on the networking button above or in the lobby, and you will be placed in a breakout room to continue today's conversations. Congratulations if you have won a prize. You will be contacted by our team in the next few days. There are still some prizes available, so please head over to the photo booth and take a photo to get a scratch ticket for the prize. Thank you so much to everyone here today, Stephanie, to all the staff at the GNCC, as well as Jen Harper. What a great day. Let's continue this conversation, and we wish you all a very happy International Women's Day.
Thank you for joining us on the main stage. We're in our networking rooms now, so click the link above and join us. Thank you for joining us on the main stage. We're in our networking rooms now, so click the link above and join us.